Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Jason Mozo, Senior Vice President for the Florida Chamber Safety Council, and I want to thank all of you for taking the time to join us here this morning. Today's webinar is focused on active shooter and workplace violent threats. Leading this webinar, we have Chief Carl Metzger, Associate Vice President and Chief of Police of the University of Central Florida, and Ed Foulke, the former head of OSHA, and currently a partner at Fisher Phillips. We are grateful for both Chief Metzger and Ed for serving as a member of our Florida Chamber Leadership Cabinet Advisory Board. At the end of the webinar, we were going to host a Q&A session. So if you have any questions, please type in your question in the Q&A section, and I will ask those on your behalf. The Florida Chamber Safety Council was launched in the summer of 2020 with the sole mission of making Florida the safest, healthiest, and most sustainable state in America. We are grateful to Chief Metzger, Ed, and our entire advisory board of leading statewide companies and leaders for providing us with the best practices and helping to make Florida a national model of workplace safety. Here on your screen, you'll see just a sample of some of the customized on-site trainings that we offer. Our trainers are fully certified and qualified experts in their respective fields of safety and health. Our team will come to you and conduct these trainings at your site at no additional costs. In addition to our private training offerings, we offer public training courses, which are unique safety trainings for safety professionals, as well as human resource professionals, or anyone that's aspiring a career in those fields. And it can be taken conveniently from your home or work with our virtual offerings. Please visit our website at flchambersafety.com/learn in order to learn more about these courses and register for any classes that you may be interested in. Once again, we are thrilled to offer public safety courses at our 2024 Leadership Conference on Safety, Health, and Sustainability. These courses will be held at the Disney Contemporary Resort on May 8th, and they are a perfect opportunity for professional development for you and your team before attending our leadership conference. Exhibitor registration is now open for the leadership conference. This year, we are offering an enhanced experience that includes premium booth placements, lead retrieval apps, access to the attendee list, and learning labs, which is designed to provide an exclusive time with all of the conference attendees to talk about your services, your products, and how you can establish a safer and healthier workplace for these companies. We are thrilled to welcome 23-time Olympic gold medalist and mental health advocate Michael Phelps as our opening keynote speaker. This conference is the nation's only event of its kind that is dedicated to helping you and your company move the needle on safety, health, and sustainability. It is the premier event for Florida leaders who are ready to learn how to affect lasting excellence in the three pillars essential to workplace success. We invite you to visit our conference website and take advantage of the discounted registration rates that went on for the month of February. I would like to personally welcome the newest Florida Chamber Safety Council members. Last year, we launched this new membership program for the Florida Chamber Safety Council. We know how difficult it can be for a human resource director or the head of operations of your company to also juggle safety for a business, which is why the Florida Chamber Safety Council want to serve as your safety department and partner in staying compliant and keeping your team safe. You can choose from 3 membership levels: advocate, leader, and champion. Each level includes 24/7 safety support, a safety council orientation, as well as a complete annual risk evaluation. Then, based off of your level, you can choose from a list of safety training courses that can be taken either in person or virtually. You will always receive a discount on additional safety trainings to those that are included within your membership level, which therefore saves you additional costs. Please make sure to check out more on our website, or you can reach out to me directly to learn more about our membership programs. As we continue growing and expanding services, the Florida Chamber Safety Council is partnering with national leading companies that's providing high-quality safety supplies. We are here as a resource to better provide you with the supplies and the solutions to establish a healthier and safer workplace. If there is anything that you may need, or if you have any questions regarding providing certain safety supplies and solutions to your employees, please do not hesitate to reach out to me at any time. Another vital service that we offer is on-site safety and health risk evaluations, where we come to your facility and or job site to provide a thorough risk assessment. These inspections are 100% confidential and are designed not only to enhance what you currently have in place to assure a safer and healthier workplace, but also to be in compliance with an OSHA, federal, and state regulations. Please reach out to me to learn more about these services and how we can work together for a safer and healthier future. We have an absolutely amazing group of presenters for today's webinar. So without further ado, it is my sincere pleasure to turn the program over to Florida Chamber Leadership Cabinet members Ed Foulke, as well as Chief Carl Metzger, who in turn will introduce all of you to Sergeant Matthew Scott of the UCF Police Department. Gentlemen, I want to sincerely thank you for lending your time and your talents with us today on this important and vital subject matter. The floor is yours, Ed.
All right, thank you, Jason. I appreciate it, and just say welcome to everybody that's here on the webinar today. As you can see from this title, this is really a very critical subject matter for most employers, if not all employers across the country. And it's not one day or well, maybe it's a month, but we see it constantly where we're seeing some type of workplace violence occurring at workplaces, schools, and even charitable organizations. You see it. So it's something that we really need to be focusing on. We need to be taking an active role involvement in this so that we can prevent them. And so we're kind of going to go through a lot of different things here, talk about that. I'm going to kind of talk about more kind of the general legal obligations, and then Chief Metzger and Sergeant Scott are going to talk about the dealing with an active attacker. I think that was what it is. So let's just go ahead and get going. And I pushed the button. Let's see. There we go. Unfortunately, workplace violence cannot be completely prevented. I mean, it's just, and that's why we got to be put us in the place that we can minimize any impact that it may have, or at least discourage it too. So we got to minimize somehow continue to put the stuff in place, things in place that will do that. We're going to talk a little bit about workplace violence. We're going to talk about preventing workplace violence, and then like I say, we're going to talk about active attackers. So let's kind of just go here. First of all, you got to know what's covering under workplace violence, because it's a broader than what you probably think or what you see on television. So physical or verbal assaults, obviously, are covered. Threats, which is a little bit more not as detailed as you would think. Threats, coercion, intimidation, all these things come under the play of workplace violence. And all these things, if you don't prevent them, could result in your company having some type of lawsuit be brought against you for not actually preventing them. So you need to do that. So, and of course, we have what is clearly the ultimate nightmare. And as I said before, it's something unfortunate we're seeing occur way too often. We have an armed or disgruntled employee, client, visitor who shoots or otherwise unleashes some type of deadly force in the workplace. And of course, others are also common, but shootings really are kind of a rare, at least in the workplace as such. So I put these in here about the myths, because I've heard these from my clients. I'm talking about when I'm talking to them about having some type of workplace violence program to prevent that. And these are the things I hear, that it couldn't happen here. We have a really good workforce. We have a really good employees in our work site. They care about each other. So we could never happen here. This type of workplace violence couldn't happen here. And of course, there's the thing that violent employee just snapped without warning. And we're going to go into some of the warning signs there, but it's clear that that employees normally just don't snap. Okay, so that idea. Then if the employees, and the other myth is that if a foreign employee provides clues, then workplace violence can be prevented. Once again, the clues will be there for you. You got to look at them, but then you're going to have to be proactive in dealing with those, and so that we can prevent it. So on that, so let's kind of go to the next one. Another myth: I'm working in a safe part of town. I hear that all the time. We're in a really nice area, it's very. Let's say that we have a great security here and everything else like that. We're in it, so we don't have to worry about that. And then, of course, this idea that if you have a general philosophy within your work, so that dignity and respect will prevent workplace violence. Having a philosophy and implementing a dignity and respect for every employee is one way in which you can eliminate or not eliminate, but minimize workplace violence at your work site. But so we need to be kind of focused even more so on that. But it does help. Dignity and respect clearly will go a long way. And also, if you're having dignity and respect, then you're going to have that open communication. And if for some reason you don't catch the signs, the warning signs, then your employees who are working with an employee who may be demonstrating or those warning signs, they're going to be coming to you and telling you about that. So, I think dignity and respect is also important, and treating people with respect will, in the long run, probably help you prevent a lot of potential workplace violence at your work site. So, in most states, there is no law that requires employers to have a workplace violence policy. OSHA does look at that a good bit. I mean, and if you have a situation where an employee that you have workplace violence at your work site, some type of shooting or some other type of activity, and it's reported or a complaint is made to OSHA, then OSHA has the ability to utilize the general duty clause. And so we need to recognize that even though there is no workplace violence policy, there's no requirement in most states, law require that employers prohibit weapons on the workplace. Now, most do have that in place, but and you can there require it's a lot of states have the rules that or a statute that says that an employer can prohibit weapons in the workplace, and normally you have some type of sign or sticker on the front door or something like that, and that's it. So and there's no requirement that you have some type of catastrophic accident plan or a plan for an active shooter event there. Once again, OSHA is going to be from a general duty clause violation perspective. OSHA is going to be looking to see, what type of notice did you have? Because that's part of a general duty clause requirement. You have to be able to show that the company knew with the exercise of reasonable diligence could have known about this particular hazard. And active shooter or potential active shooter or someone, a disgruntled employee, could be considered, some type of hazard there or some type of violation. So we need to be careful about that. But once again, we're required under general duty, and we're going to go into some of the statute or some of the negligence laws to exercise ordinary care to prevent foreseeable harm. That's the test right there for tort negligence in pretty much almost all states. So we need to understand that we need to have that. We can't put our heads in the sand and say, well, I didn't know anything about that, because once again, what is exercising ordinary care? And we'll talk a little bit more. That's a couple of other slides covers a little bit more of that. How can you be held once again, for liable for workplace violence? Employees harm employees. Now, workers' comp generally limits employer liability in that case, and that was the whole idea of workers' comp was it was a kind of a two-way street. Workers' comp was intended if an employee got injured, he immediately was able to get some type of payment or compensation for that particular injury. But at the same time, The second, the two-way street was that employers would have some limits on the number of the amount of liability that they have. Now, while you say that with respect to employee harming employees, that workers' comp normally is an exclusive remedy, but there are states that allow to get around workers' comp by showing either gross negligence or intentional acts on the part of the employer. And if they can get around that, and you're going to find that the plaintiff's lawyers are always going to be looking to see how they can get around that, because you may be if somebody gets seriously injured or even killed, the liability limits for employers is probably about 100,000, maybe a little bit more. But if you can get around workers' comp, now you're talking about millions of dollars in potential liability. Now, what happens when a third party harms an employee? Once again, here we talked about that. I mentioned earlier about the OSHA's general duty clause. If you knew that you're in a particular situation, and there are cases that OSHA has taken that have been sustained by the review commission that have said that they brought a general duty clause violation because it said that you knew you were putting this particular person in harm's way. You had warning signs, and a lot of this comes with respect to a lot of healthcare is a big area. This is a big area for healthcare because they're sending people out to people's houses to do, therapy or whatever it is, or if you're a company that you have supply people to take care of elderly or something, you may if somebody gets injured or killed, then you can be pulled under the general duty clause under OSHA, and you also may be covered under the common law theory of negligence. So we need to understand that even if it doesn't occur on the works at our site, we still could have some type of liability there. And then if we have an employee harming third parties, under here, when you have someone coming onto your site, a visitor, whatever, and it could be vendor, supplier, contractor, whatever. If your employee injures that third party, then you once again you're going to be looking at potential common law negligence, because clearly in that type of situation, dealing with guests, vendors, suppliers, contractors, those people are not covered under your workers' comp protection. So you're going to be potentially looking at third party negligence again on that. So. And in those cases, you're looking at potentially millions of dollars in fines or awards from the courts. This is one of the areas that I mentioned earlier about doing the things you got to be doing. How can you protect against that? Well, here hiring insufficient screening as a result of hiring a person could result in not only civil liability, but also potentially other liabilities from a criminal section. So you need to be a little bit careful about that. OSHA too, particularly, they are looking more and more at working with Department of Justice and doing referrals there on criminal acts or situations what they can claim would be a criminal act. So we need to be a little bit more concerned about this thing. We need to be looking at, and this is what they would call as negligent hiring here. We didn't do the screening, didn't screen them there, and didn't do the things we should have done. We would have known that they were on that there's a potential for harm. Negligent retention is another tort liability mostly tort liability that you may be sourced. If you keep an employee after you learn that his or her is unsuitable for your particular job, and now, and so you have to be a little bit careful. But once again, you've got to be careful when you're hiring people and when you retain people. If you have an employee who's always starting fights and all you're doing is disciplining them through warnings or whatever, and yet he or she is moving into the area where it's getting physical, that's where you're going to start seeing that the retention of that person is going to put you, the employer, on a potential liability for some type of negligent claim. And then you have negligent supervision, where you fail to provide adequate supervision and safeguards for employees and customers from threats. this, a lot of times, adequate supervision, sometimes where you have employees that are doing like late night shifts and stuff like that, where they don't have people there to be able to, for them, that may be having employees to be able get injured from outside sources. But if you're here, once again, if you're not supervising people and you don't know that they're doing things, particularly if it's going to be towards your customers, uh, you're going to see this type of negligence lawsuits being brought against you. All right, let's go. So here's kind of an example. This was an older case. This is kind of really when they kind of started talking about negligent hiring, negligent retention, but here, the Florsheim hired, knowing he had a history of criminal violence. And of course, there is a whole, depending on the particular states that you're dealing with, going back in a person's criminal history sometimes is limited. So, but knew he had a criminal background, had history of violence, had been actually had found guilty on that in another situation, and then Florsheim hired this person, decided to clean floors at the Kmart in the middle of the night, where he was alone with female employee, and he sexually assaulted her. Florsheim was held liable for negligent hiring and negligent detection. They didn't fail to exercise care in assigning him there, and they could see that this created a foreseeable risk to some third party, i.e. Oakley, in this particular case. Okay, and then the other thing about why this is important, and clearly, obviously, the focus is more on how it could impact your company's employees from there. But you have physical or emotional harm or death. It's going to be some liability you're going to have. If you're counseling people, that's going to be costing you money too. It's important that you do that, but you still need to understand this is the overall cost of dealing with workplace violence. Time spent dealing with the crisis, lost productivity during and after the event, legal fees, potential jury awards. So we're dealing with a whole series of costs that might result from some a workplace violence incident. So here's a case where a temp agency failed to carefully screen an applicant, do background checks. The employee stabbed the worker at the company's client. The employee, the worker who was stabbed, received 5.5 million awards. Amtrak failed to discipline employee for violent tendencies. Employee shot and seriously injured supervisor. Award to the supervisor was 3.5 million. Employee sexually assaulted a co-worker at a pizza parlor. Criminal background check would have showed that similar prior felonies. Once again, the award was for 1.5 million. So you can see that we're talking about some serious money that could obviously have a direct impact on the company's ability to be able to maintain the operation. So who's covered? These are kind of things that are more to pretty much you would think about these things. The people who do exchange money in the public, banks, those type of things, those have 7-Elevens, a lot of that. You've seen a lot of those type of places. Deliver services. Once again, high risk of having some type of workplace violence occur on them. Working alone or small groups during late night or early morning. Working in high crime areas. Once again, if you're in that area, I think you're going to have to implement more things in place to be able to show that you're not, if you're going to avoid some type of liability. And working in community settings or homes. Once again, we talked about that. I mentioned that just a minute ago about having hospital employees being sent to person's homes to provide some type of medical or physical therapy and stuff like that. Once again, those are the people that, and most of these things that we have in here are a result of case law, a lot of different types of cases that have been held in these areas. So, what causes workplace violence? Well, probably the list is endless, but if you have some mental instability, obviously, and a lot of times you hear about these shootings where they're talking about, well, we knew he had some mental issues and they were never discussed and never touched. If there is mental instability, that's something, I mean, you're most doctors are not a doctors So you're going to have to make sure that if you can have a concern about some type of mental instability, then you need to be having bringing into your work site the professionals that can kind of evaluate that type of situation. Insensitive employment action. If the terminations are an area that you really have to be concerned about with respect to the potential workplace violence. And a lot of times we have the situation where the employees are insensitive. Excuse me, the employers are insensitive when they're terminating somebody. Something happens and they pull the trigger too quickly, and it's sometimes it turns out that the person should not have been terminated because it wasn't his fault or her fault. But whenever you do any type of termination, and I do I do a program where we talk about all these things. How do you do these things properly? But you really have to. It's not something you if you're going to terminate somebody, you need to be really doing a deep dive into what exactly happened. And one thing you got to really do, and this is something that a lot of companies don't do, is they don't ask the employee that they're terminating what happened. What is his or her side of the story? And that makes it insensitive because people say, I don't even care what I said. And I deal with this a fair amount. So you need to be concerned about that. We talked about the banks here, types of industries, liquor stores, banks, quickie marks. Those are all 7-Elevens. It's a big issue, unfortunately, there. Labor disputes. You used to see that more. When I first started practicing law back in the late 70s, I'm an old guy. Labor used to have a lot of labor disputes where there was some type of violence at the work site. If you and even I thought you still have to be sensitive to that too, because if there is, if negotiations on a contract are not going the way that the employees and the labor unions think it should be going, you still have that potential where people might start doing some type of violence to people that are managers particularly, but even employees who are more supportive of the company. So offensive management styles, there's all types of managers, unfortunately, and unfortunately most managers don't get really any training on how to be a manager. So something we can look at there. Another thing that has been a problem in the past, right now it doesn't seem to be that, is downsizing. But there is a lot of reorganization. I was talking to one of my neighbors the other day, and his operation, their company was bought out by another company, and fortunately for him, he was not part of a reorganization that resulted in about half of his department being laid off, and so those type of things can cause a lot of problem, a lot of tension, because now it's not so bad, but back in the days where there were a lot of people terminated, the potential of finding another job was really scarce, and that caused a lot of problems. And of course, the trouble at home, which is a little bit hard to know what's going on there. I think you have to have that open, open focus on having people know that they can come in and talk to you anytime they want to. So I included this slide. I don't like this slide because it's this is the typical offender for workplace violence, or not just shooters, but this is I think this came from the FBI, their kind of thing. So that's why I included it. But I don't think you can say that if it's a male 35 or 45 that person's going to be could be offender. It could be, but I just don't see it there. Transition job history. That's one. If you see someone that's been in a lot of different jobs, that's the thing you need to know. Loners, no family, no local support, chronic disgruntled people. When you hire people, you need to be observing them pretty quickly when they come on board, kind of see what's going on. If they start complaining right when they first get on the job, you may have made a bad hire. So You need to try to deal with that, constant monitor it. If it's not, address it to a certain degree as you can by meeting with the person, trying to maybe do some coaching and stuff like that. And if that doesn't work, then you probably need to cut your losses. An employee that constantly blaming everybody for his problems, and it's not his fault. Once again, that's another sign. High maintenance employee, once again, you're constantly having to deal with him, and his question or his demands more likely than that. Fascination with weapons, I think that is one that you need to be a little bit concerned about there. If he's always talking about that, I had to be a little bit concerned. But once again, I think this is not this is the list, but this profile is not the rule, obviously. A lot of violent people don't fit the profile. You kind of almost prejudice yourself when you get into that. But you need to be just aware. More it's just kind of be aware of what your people are, who your people are, how you've been dealing with them, information, and if things start changing with them, that's kind of the biggest thing I think it's been my experience is when an employee who's been a good employee, not having any problems, and then all of a sudden starts having a lot of problems, then that's where you really need to really start looking to say what's going on here, and meeting with him or her, and basically say what's going on. You got some issues you want to talk about? We're here. We got other people we can help. We got services we can help. We have all these things. So, signs to watch for. We talked about this a little bit. History of workplace. If they have a history of violence, you probably just don't want to hire them. And that there's some people that, there's some things that you're not supposed to say, well, you're not supposed to, prejudiced on that. But, if there's a history there, you're basically potentially hiring a problem. So if the person is making threats in the workplace, or once again, I mean, you got to jump on that quickly. Anybody making threats, and that's why we have our zero tolerance policy in place. And you should have a zero tolerance policy. And if you have a zero tolerance policy, people are going to recognize that. So and say, oh, okay, we understand that zero tolerance being we don't tolerate this. And if there any type of threats or any type of harassment or any type of physical altercation, we don't tolerate that, and we are going to investigate that immediately. And if it is, then you're not going to be here anymore. And that's a powerful way to kind of deal with this whole situation. Alcohol and drug abuse, obviously, or hopefully, you don't have this occurring at the workplace. And it's hard to know what people are abusing drugs or using alcohol, particularly. But if they come in the workplace, and the supervisors need to be trained on observing some of this stuff. They should be the ones that be reporting this information to you. If they smell an alcohol on their breath, you got to deal with that right away. I mean, there's nothing. Obviously, you can't. Today, I mean. Nowadays, with respect to the legalization of marijuana in so many states and everything. I mean, last night we went to, I took my wife and daughter, and she brought her girlfriend along, and we went to the steak place, and we went into the parking lot after the steak place, and you can smell marijuana I mean, it's about knocks you over. And the two girls are just going on and on about it and saying that. So you have that type of thing, and you're smelling more. Unfortunately, I'm sensing that you're smelling people that have marijuana on their clothes. The smoke from the marijuana. Now that doesn't mean they're doing it there. Doesn't mean they're impaired. But once again, it's something you got to have to look at and be aware of it. Decrease or inconsistency in productivity. If Joe has been one of your best employees for 10 years, and now all of a sudden something's going, he has a decrease in productivity. Matter of fact, his productivity is just constantly bad. So anyway, if you have that problem, then you need to recognize that's something that's a potential warning sign. And you just need to go and say, hey, Joe, you've been our best employee for 10 years. And now all of a sudden you're having problems with your productivity. It's inconsistent. There's been a decrease overall. Is there something going on that I need to know about? and hopefully you have that type of connection with them that you're gonna be able to deal with that particular problem. Overreaction to minor events, people flying off the handle, so to speak. If you start having people with paranoid, that's clearly or excessive behavior. You need to do it. I had a case one time where an employee kept constantly washing his hands, and it worried a lot of the employees too. Even so, it's really kind of interesting. There was something that you could have this thing up here. So he kept washing his hands. It was it was.
Hi, Mr. Foulke.
So you have to be deal with that. And then poor attendance. Poor attendance is something that we're just not going to, we can't accept, and we're going to deal with that. So I apologize for that. I thought I had turned all these things off, but infrequent, unreasonable complaints, erratic, impulsive behavior, unsafe behavior. Obviously, if you're dealing with some type of unsafe behavior, that person may not only hurt himself, but he may hurt another employee. So you need to be there. Insubordination, open defiance, disrespect. You have insubordination, you need to address that right away. And most companies have an insubordination policy that allows people to be terminated for insubordination. And you have to be a little careful that you have a situation where you have someone who's been there for a long time, and particularly if you've has been there for a fairly long time, and he's had this open defiance during this whole time period, and he did nothing about it. That kind of opens up the case. That kind of sets you up in a way. So you got to be careful. So if you have insubordination, you need to address it just quickly. So, stalking, obviously, when derogatory comments, racist or sexist remarks. We know we don't deal with that kind of. We address it quickly there. So, all right. So now we're going to talk about prevention there, and let's kind of go there. The hiring process. We kind of basically touched base on this a little bit. You need to have an application form. I've had companies now, clients that they thought they had to get away from that. They just they accepted, they accepted a resume, some person's resume, and you can take the resume, but the resumes aren't going to cover all the questions that you really need to be asked for. So you need to have your own application form, and focus on what skills and qualifications that you're wanting in your job. But let's see what their qualifications are. What's their job history? What's their educational background? The second bullet there, we've gotten way far away from this thing of face-to-face interviews. So you can, how can you can not if you don't meet somebody before do a meeting with them and be able to talk to them, giving them open-ended questions and ask them about things. They can get a lot of good sense about, is this a person that can work with us? Can he fit in our company here? Background checks, we got to be a little bit careful background checks, because there's so many states now that you really limit the ability of employers to do those type of things. But but we need to do, and notice on the top one there, verify all information. I read an article. Oh, God, it's probably been 2 or 3. Oops, I went too far. It must have been 2 or 3, at least 2 or 3 years ago. It turns out that on the applications, they were doing how many applications stated in or resumes who stated that they had graduated from Harvard University. Well, it turned out that there were like 3 times as many people claiming that they had graduated from Harvard University that Harvard actually even produced that many students. So obviously, 2/3 of those people who's were just lying. And that's why you want to make sure that you're following up on that. Policies, we want to have and most employers have this, but you really need to look at some of this stuff here. I mean, we got basic work rules. We should have that. We should have something dealing with, obviously, safety. Here's the things that we want to have. No threatening, no threats, all that type of things. But we need to have an anti-violence policy that really specifies that. They need to know, once again, I mentioned this earlier, we need to specify, here's the things we don't tolerate. And if we hear about it, we're going to be immediately investigating it. And if we find that it's true, we're probably going to be put on suspension or put on leave until the investigation is completed. And then if it is, we're going to terminate you. That is a strong deterrent, I find, to that. So Then and that kind of ties us about the as identification and a resolution of this. If we have somebody, um, if we find the problem, if we find out what was true, and that identification means we're doing an investigation. We're looking, talking to people, we're getting witnesses and stuff like those things, so we can have all the facts and then move forward. Workplace searches. We need to let the employees know that they don't have a right of privacy in the workplace. So, and you got to be careful about that. There's plenty of case law that says if you do certain things, you create a sense of privacy, and you can't. It limits your ability to do some type of workplace searches. And of course, you need to have an emergency action plan. Uh, uh, Even though I mean, OSHA has an emergency action standard, but it technically only applies to certain industries, certain companies, mostly those companies that have hazardous chemicals and process safety, dealing with processes. But it's still an emergency action plan to deal. How are we going to deal with these things? And kind of talks about how you handle that. They should have that policy in place. Are we going to have if there is and part of the action plan? You got your emergency action plan dealing with tornadoes and hurricanes and all those type of things, but you also have that part of your action plan dealing with how you're going to deal with an active shooter or some type of that type of situation. How are we going to evacuate? How are we going to tell people how they need to deal with that? And I know Chief Metzger is going to probably be talking to that, or Sergeant Scott's going to talk probably a lot about that. So I'm going to get out of that. We always talked about no violence policy, zero tolerance. We got violence, stress, abuse, discharge automatically. We got to make sure they understand we take our complaints seriously. And anybody and we're going to have also part of this is we have multiple means of reporting this from our employees, and then having no policy. They need to know there will be, if you report an incident or if you report some concerns, there will be no retaliation against you. It will not impact your job in any way. So, no voluntary policy. Obviously, we document things quickly. Follow up with reporter to the reporter and the accuser. That's where I find the biggest issues from my standpoint is they do they'll follow up back, they'll get back to whoever reported is, but a lot of times they just don't want, no one wants to talk to the accuser, and it's unfortunate you can't get away. That's not going to work. And if you do terminate somebody and you never talk to them, guess what? That is the most sympathetic person to the jurors. And you're probably going to lose on some type of negligence suit against you or whatever. And then we're going to conduct training. That's another thing we need to make sure our supervisors, particularly our first line supervisors, they need to know what they need to be looking for and how to handle that. So we talked about training our employees, supervisors, managers, what to report, and these are the type of things that we need to they need to report. Let us know about them. Recognize pre-attack behaviors. Once again, this is for you're not probably going to get this your hourly employees, but clearly your supervisors, managers, all those persons should have this part of their training, be able to know what the potential dangers are, trust their ignorance, and know about these type of things and how. And if they see this, we may not want them to be dealing with it. It may want them to say, you see these things, you'll let us, let HR and safety know about this, and we'll address that. And we'll handle that there. So what to do in emergency, once again, call 919, alert security, and maybe we have panic or emergency alarms that can in that place. Physical security, and I suspect that Sergeant Scott will be getting into this, a lot of these types of things. So I'm not going to go into this very much, other than these are the things that you need to be looking at for your physical security. And searches, touching people is kind of a no-no, and like I said, I think that we'll hear that from Sergeant Scott on that. So once again, if we're doing threat investigation, we got to have a detailed investigation. If we're going to be successful in defending the company against any type of lawsuit, and even if it's improper termination or something like that, we need to make sure that we're doing the witness interviews, and they're in writing. We get that information, we know all that, and there's that last one. We can't promise confidentiality because sooner or later some of this stuff is going to be coming out. So we don't promise that, but we do make sure that we're getting all the information about what happened exactly. Appropriate correction, and that's the going question. We're documenting it, and then we got to look and find out what we've done in the past in the similar situations, because we don't. That opens up. If we don't do that, then it opens us up to some type of age, race, sex discrimination claim because one person was treated differently than another person for the same type of conduct. Follow through, inform the accuser of the action that's going to be taken. And once again, we talked about checking back with the accuser too. We want to make sure they realize that we took their complaint seriously and we addressed their complaints. Employee assistance programs. This is another thing we can include as part of SF. I know a lot of employers, small employers, basically, small, medium-sized employers, they don't have the resources to be able to do a lot of this stuff, employee assistance programs and stuff like this. I will tell you this, though. It has been my experience that if you're looking to have some type of assistance programs for your employees to deal with some of this counseling and stress management, those type of things, you're going to find out that your county has these things in place and are available to. And most times they're available for free. So you need to look and find it in your particular county. What services do they provide there? What type of employee assistance programs could they have? But if we can, if you have the resources to be able to do it, clearly you want to do it. The fitness for duty, though, that's an absolute. You don't want to be bringing back somebody who is not fit for duty, so you need to be able to be concerned about that. Here, you do have to protect the confidentiality of the employees, preventing that. We talked about discipline, discharge. Do it at the beginning or end of the shift. Once again, you don't want to have things fester. If you do it during the middle of the shift, bad things can happen. So, this the third one. State the facts, don't debate the decision. This is you're going to be saying this is what we found. We talked to you about that. You didn't dispute what was being said here. You didn't dispute that you did threaten that person. And so, and you know our policy about that. And so we're terminating you as of today. Of course, we want to manage or prevent the employees returning for work. Usually, you would never do a termination by yourself. You should have at least 2 management persons with you. If you think there's going to be a problem, then you need to be having your security, the security that you have on site. If you have it, if you don't have on site, then you probably need to be calling your local police and say, listen, we're concerned about this. We would like to have someone come, and they're usually willing to be able to assist you on that there. And a lot of times you're going to have have an off-duty cop or policeman from your neighbor area to be there. So, all right, and let's see. We talked about back and forth. We've done all these things. We've done all that there. Fairness. We've done all that. Do the trails. Here's what OSHA's emergency action plan requires. And we've kind of gone into that anyway, so we'll go. I want to make sure we get that. Oh yeah, no, we're not going to get into this there. So, all right, that gets us to our next presenter. Let me see. Yeah, I put that there. Yeah, Carl. Jason did mention about Chief Metzger, Carl Metzger. He's that he was the associate vice president. He is the associate vice president, chief of police at the University of Central Florida's police department. He's on the committee. I think we have his bio there. I don't know. Did he have his bio there? Again, yeah. Well, maybe we do. Yeah, here we are. I'm not going to go into all his stuff, but the one thing I was looking at this bio this is a little while ago. It doesn't. The most important thing, he's just he's very knowledgeable. He's been doing this since 1989. See, as you can see there, that's like over 30 years. And but it doesn't talk about what a great guy he is too. But he has tremendous experience and knowledge in law enforcement. That's probably why he's where he is today, as the head guy there at and I understand at the university is one of the largest, or maybe one of the largest. So I'm not going to say any more because we got a lot to get covered, but I'll turn it over to Carl for his introduction. I guess you're going to introduce Sergeant Scott. So.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ed. Great presentation. I always learn something when I listen to Ed Foulke, the legend, but very informative.
Stop with the legend, please.
Oh, it's true. It's true. And so thank you for that. I've been around a long time, 35 years in law enforcement, the first 26 years at the Orlando Police Department. I've been out here at UCF for almost 10 years. And those of you on this webinar may not know that we are one of the largest universities in the country. A lot of people say the second largest. We have 68,000 students, about 12,000 faculty and staff. And so we're a medium-sized city. But what distinguishes us from a medium-sized city is our population. And our students are at that age when they're struggling to find their place in the world. And oftentimes they are in crisis. And so we deal with mental health calls every day. And we're very well trained and experienced in that area. What comes along with that are threats to our campus community. And both from our student population and sometimes from our employees as well. So we have a model threat management program and threat management team. And we've been able to avoid would-be active shooters on many occasions in the past. So I'm going to start with a quick story just to get things kicked off. And I'll start at the end of the story. So picture this apartment complex across the street from our UCF campus. And we have half a dozen police officers, 3 federal agents in their tactical gear, 3 UCF police officers knocking on a door of someone who had recently purchased an assault rifle, a sniper rifle with a bipod and a sniper scope, 1,000 rounds of ammunition, a brand new Corvette with cash, and had made threats to the campus community. And so there they are. How did they get there? And I will tell you, it's because we had someone see something, say something, and of course we followed up on it immediately. And within short order, we're banging on that door, and this individual ended up being taken into custody, and we seized the firearms. And we knew that he had intentions of shooting this place up, and we thwarted that. It's because we had someone see something and tell us, but we leave no red flag unaddressed. And it does come down to, if someone does say something, we're going to take care of business. So, and that's going to talk all about threat management. So I do want to say that during the course of this conversation, it's going to be pretty strongly worded. So I want you to know that if you get triggered or it upsets you, you can step away at any time because what we're talking about is serious and sometimes a little bit frightening. So take care of yourself. All right, next slide. So an active assailant, what is it? And next. We use the term active assailant, and most people here have heard the term active shooter, but an active assailant, someone who has ill intent, may not just use a gun. There are other means to carry out a violent act. It could be a vehicle, could be a bomb, could be a knife. It could be fire, right? So we prefer the generic term active assailant to that, but it's someone who is actively engaged in wanting to harm or kill people. And we're talking about in a confined or populated area like the workplace. So, firearms are the primary means of them carrying out their plans. And the victims are usually selected at random, not always. Sometimes there are targets who are specifically addressed, but and then after that, it could be random. These events are chaotic. They take place very, very quickly, and they're over quickly usually. And then law enforcement is usually required to end a situation like that. We train for this every year, multiple times a year, and we practice for those incidents where we don't get red flags and we don't know something is going to happen ahead of time. So we try to address it on the front end with threat management, and on the back end with our training, where our officers are equipped with all the tools they need to respond to an incident like this. So next up. And so now I want to introduce Sergeant Matt Scott. I'm not going to read the entire bio except to say that Matt is very experienced. He's a rising star here at UCF. He was part of our threat management team. He actually helped form that unit into the model unit that it is today. And he is an expert on active assailant response, and he teaches this to our faculty, staff, and students. If not weekly, then it's pretty close to that. And he's a proud UCF alum and does an amazing job. So Matt, I'm going to turn the program over to you now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chief, for that. Well, good morning, everyone. Once again, Matthew Scott here, and we're once again going to dive into what we in law enforcement want all of our civilian population, especially in the workplace, what we want you to do when it comes to active assailant. When we talk about active assailant, we don't just necessarily mean active shooter, right? It is a fantastic terminology that we're trying to basically get into, covering everything, right? Picture this. The news media and a lot of different types of media out there will have you thinking active shooter only is a male with a long rifle and a duffel bag and a trench cloak from the Matrix walking into your business. That isn't only what things are. Active assailant, we're trying to keep things broad. If you're walking from your car to your business or place of employment and someone tries to take your wallet or your purse, are you being actively assailed in that moment? I think you absolutely are. What takeaways, what things should we do in order to, number one, hopefully prevent that, just like Ed was talking about, and number two, how do we keep our employees safe, right? Avoid, deny, defend. So I'm sure many of you have heard the other terminology that law enforcement has been putting out over the last couple of years: run, hide, fight. Run, hide, fight. We loved that. It was a great program, and it's exactly what we want our population to do, what we want our office workers to do. However, there's a word in there that we started to notice that really wasn't getting the proper attention that we wanted to be, and it was hide. When I tell someone to hide, in that, as far as when it comes to run, hide, fight, there's so much more to it, but all people will do is just simply hide, and hiding without a plan is no plan at all, folks. So let's dive into avoid, deny, defend. And we're going to go ahead and actually talk first about decision-making. It is so important when it comes to decision-making, personal safety and self-defense, right? Type A is what we want everyone to be. Everyone in our offices, everyone in our businesses, we want you to be a type A decision maker. And that's where you make the right decision. And because it comes with the advanced preparation, right? The quick thinking that goes into that, you made a decision and it's the right one. And we're talking about the advanced prep work. It's your policy and procedure. We know right now that if someone were to pull the fire alarm in your business, everyone's going to get up and they're going to walk right out because they know, hey, if X happens, we do this. And this is that advanced preparation that we're talking about. Same thing that it comes to any type of assailant situation that you're faced with. We have to get in the mindset of what if scenarios. If this happens, what would I do? I love asking the question when I do this type of training. I ask people, if you get into a car accident, or for example, if you get a flat tire, I'm sure a lot of people on this webinar have had a flat tire before, but what's the first thing that you do? And I get so many responses that's not even close to what I want to hear first, because I hear, oh, I'm gonna call my mom, my dad, I'm gonna call my Geico, I'm gonna call my insurance company, I'm gonna call my friend, I'm gonna call, pull the car over, pull over. That's the first thing you do. But if you've never experienced a flat tire before, maybe you don't know. In that first couple moments, you experience panic, right? That's where we get into the type B decision maker, where you make a decision, it's the wrong one. But you know what? I'm gonna make it again, and I'm gonna make it again, I'm gonna make it again. And I keep getting bad results, but I'm expecting different results. I'm doing the same wrong thing. And of course, we know the definition of doing that over and over again is insanity. So We need to make a different decision. If that first thing you tried didn't work, you have to do something different. And of course, you want to avoid being a type C decision maker, where you made a decision and you freeze. We know that when the human body experiences stress, it forces you to make two decisions, right? We're either going to fight or we're going to flee, fight or flight. And unfortunately, there's a third option that the vast majority of the American populace lives within, and it's frozen, where something happens and I'm just like, I can't make a decision. Folks, the longer you or your staff stay in a state of frozenness is the higher the likelihood of you potentially getting severely hurt or injured. So we have to force ourselves to move, do something. Don't care what you do. You either fight or you flee, run, fight, whatever you're doing, you have to make that decision, right? So this is the type of decision making we're thinking about as we are having our employees in our offices, as we're doing our work. What kind of decision maker do you think your staff are? What kind of decision maker are you? Hopefully we're type A. Let's keep it moving. Let's talk about avoidance, okay? Folks, we have to be aware of our surroundings. You see the threat for what it is at the distance, and you know, okay, I'm not going over there, right? The perfect example of this is the crosswalk, where you as a pedestrian, you're crossing from across the street, you're trying to get to your location, and you stop because the sign tells you, wait. And you're stopping, you're waiting, and then it's your time to go. And as you start to cross, here comes that car, doesn't even look at the red light, blows the intersection. But you saw the threat, you were able to avoid it, and you were able to get out of harm's way. Similar thing, right? We're trying to avoid what's going on. So everything that we're discussing today, everyone, is easily applied to anything in life. It doesn't necessarily have to be the act or threat event in an office space. It could be for anything. When you're out getting groceries, when you're at the mall, the theater, at any potential soft target, right? You can apply any of these things. Be aware of your surroundings at all times. Folks, I work on a college campus. The vast majority of our students are not aware of their surroundings. And we have to constantly tell them, be aware, head on a swivel, look around you. Your same thing could be happening in your offices. We're at our desks. We're so engrossed in our work. We don't know what's happening out in the lobby. We don't know what's happening on the second floor. And there could be a potential threat. You need to be listening for what's going on, right? Know the exits of your room and your buildings. We all like to hire new employees, and the new employee will go from the front entrance to their desk and then out that entrance they came in, and they have no idea anything about the rest of the building. Don't do that. It's important that we tell everybody, explore your space. When you walk into a room, the first thing you should do isn't just sit down at a table or a desk. Look at the doors, the entrances. Okay, how am I getting out of here should something happen, right? Be aware of the actions of those around you, and to include their verbal responses. If you see someone acting strangely, identify it, right? Like Chief said, see something, say something, folks. That is so important, especially when it comes to our office spaces. We have to be accountable for the things that we see, and we should tell somebody about it. Somebody in leadership, a coworker. We need to be saying these things. Also, verbal responses. When people say something to you, you should really listen closely to it, because maybe it's a joke, but I don't know about you. If someone were to say, man, I'm just going to go home and I'm going to blow my brains out, that's not funny. And we should not just laugh at somebody's joke like that. You should tell them, hey, I don't find that funny. You shouldn't make that type of joke. Because sometimes people are trying to cry out for help and we just laugh it off until something bad happens. And you will always go, I should have said something. Be aware of suspicious activity, folks. We all know what that is. If you were to look out into your parking lot right now and you were to see someone doing the Blue's Clues and they're kind of pulling at door handles and stuff like that, in my industry, we call that a clue. And you should say something about that, right? Because it's so important. You see something that you know looks confusing to your eyes. Okay, that doesn't look right. Say something about that. That's how we protect our office. That's how we protect our space, our coworkers, right? Folks, do not argue, especially when it comes to avoidance, with a deranged person. Okay, nobody looking around their office at their coworkers or anything like that. But seriously, don't argue with deranged individuals. You have someone that's being belligerent. You have somebody that's being disrespectful, a coworker, right? Nothing you're doing, nothing you're telling them is calming them down. They're getting angrier, they're getting louder. In those instances, I want you to leave immediately if you can. That's where we talk about protocol, which we're going to get into a little bit down in the presentation, where we have, okay, if this happens, we will do this, where a manager or a leader in the office comes to handle that situation while somebody hopefully is on the phone with 911 and calling law enforcement services to assist you in that moment of whatever the case is going on, right? It could be a coworker that's maybe having an issue. It could be somebody walking off the street, entering your business and having some type of negative discussion with the front desk worker, right? Are we doing things to prepare our staff for the potentiality of negative encounters with clients, with visitors, with individuals who have nothing to do with your business, who just happen to walk into your place of employment, and now they have a confrontation. What are we doing to prepare our staff for that, right? Everything comes down to see something, say something. You see the threat on the horizon, you do your best to avoid it, right? Let's move on to the next thing. Let's talk about deny access. This is the second component of the tactics that we're talking about. The run, hide, fight, avoid, deny access. This is the hide component that we're talking about. Because remember, we in law enforcement don't just want our civilian population to hide, our community to hide. We want you to deny access. So you're trying to keep the threat or assailant away from you as long as possible if you cannot avoid them, right? What this means is you're locking your doors, you're turning all lights off, you're staying out of sight, you're getting as low as you can on that floor, and you're silencing or you're turning your cell phones as basically quiet as possible, vibration, whatever the case may be, because you're trying to make sure that if there is a threat outside of that office and it's passing, you don't want them to know. There have been studies that have been done after all kinds of active threats and active shooters that have said that these bad guys know they have a finite amount of time to get their threat or their active situation complete. And so as they're moving down these office spaces and they're going door to door to door, if that door is locked and they get the instant, okay, there's no one in there, they're moving to where they can hear people crying or screaming, whatever the case may be, because they're trying to harm as many people as possible. This is the idea behind deny access. And depending on if your door opens towards you or opens away from you, you need to barricade, right? We're talking about stacking as much furniture, whatever you can, up against that door to prevent it from opening towards you, especially if your door doesn't lock, right? But what if, Matt, what if my door opens outward? Same thing. You're going to stack as much furniture against that doorway as possible, because the idea is you're trying to keep that individual from gaining that entry access to you. Time is on your side. Time is everything. So that bad guy opens the door, all kinds of things fall on that person, right? That's what we're talking about, that deny access to yourself. I can tell you, stopping the threat. How do we do it? There are a lot of industries out there, because they've seen this situation, active threat, active assailant over the years. It has become quite the industry of fear mongering. And you have these companies that know that they can sell something to a company, and they'll buy it, because the whole idea is we got to keep our employees safe. And so the idea, just like I bring your attention to the image on the bottom left here, is, oh, we're going to send you this device. And when you put this device on the door, you're going to deploy this handle, and it's red. And when you deploy it, you're going to wait for the tone. The tone's going to make 3 sounds. And after the 3rd sound, you're going to pull in a code, a PIN code. You don't need to do any of that, right? Because in moments of stress, once again, what are we doing? All your fine motor skills are gone, right? The important things to remember: simplicity. We're talking about things you can just put on the door to prevent it from opening. We're talking about basically belts, rope, furniture, anything you can once again stack against that door to prevent that threat from getting to you, all right? The important things to remember: simplicity, 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 because in moment of threat, in moment of concern, where you've identified, hey, we have a situation here, you want to keep things simple for staff. So staff aren't going through this entire check box list of what they have to do. They know, hey, if this happens, we do this. So let's talk about cover versus concealment. Because when things happen, you're out at the grocery store, you hear potential what sounds like fireworks, and you know, hey, I think that might be gunshots. Obviously, everyone's going to try and get low. They're going to try and get behind something. What are you getting behind? Are you getting behind a hedge? Are you getting behind a metal sign? What is cover and what is concealment? So cover basically is some type of object that is concrete in nature or metallic in nature that will hopefully slow down the velocity of any deadly missiles coming at you, right? That's something that you want to get behind. Concealment is where you're getting behind a door, that foliage, that hedge that we're talking about, right? That bad guy may not know that you're there, but those deadly missiles can still come through and potentially hurt you on the other side of it. So you need to be wary of what you're putting yourself, between whatever threat that you think could potentially get at you. What are our doors? All of our doors, no matter the office that you're in, the space you're in, you may even have a bunch of windows. That's all concealment, folks. Concealment. Because once again, if you're behind a door and something comes through, you could potentially still get hurt, which is why we're telling everyone, tell your staff to get as low as possible, right? Should there be any type of emergency, you want to get as low as possible, lock that door, and do not stand in front of that door. In law enforcement, we call that the fatal funnel, right? You don't want to stand behind something that potentially you can have bad things coming through at you at. On the sides of the doors or as low as you can. And that's what we're looking at. Very quick visual of what I'm talking about here, right? Cover, deflection, potentially be able to deflect things going through it, concealment, straight through. And once again, you are on the other side of that. So it's very important to remember these things, especially if you're out and about with family. What are you hiding yourself and loved ones behind? Now we come to defense, defend. It is my favorite one out of all three, okay? If you can look closely at my slideshow, you're going to see an image of an animal. It's a tiger. Folks, that's your spirit animal, okay? You need to defend yourself. You have the right to defend yourself from any assailant that is trying to harm you or your loved ones. In that moment, you need to commit to your actions and be aggressive, because at the end of the day, you have one job, everybody. One job. And your one job is to come home at the end of the day. Oh, man, I thought my job was what I'm doing now. You're right. But everyone on this phone, on this webinar, I want you, if you're within the sound of my voice, I want you to really hear me. You have someone that loves you, that wants to see you, that wants to see you again. All right? Come home, come home, come home. It is so important that we get that through our minds, because in the moment of any threat, whether it be an active assailant, whatever the type of threat is, the mindset needs to be winning. And we're going to talk about mindset here in a little bit. But to the best of your ability, you're not going to fight. You're not going to stop fighting until you get the assistance from law enforcement, or that individual is subdued until law enforcement come on scene and take that individual away. Once again, that mindset is so important, because you are not helpless. You can survive. You will make it home. You will, right? That needs to be the mindset. Folks, I've been in law enforcement 17 years, all right? And I can tell you, Chief Metzger will probably agree, there are only two types of victims I've always encountered. Two types. I'll give you an example of both. Victim A. Sergeant Scott, when you find that bad guy, yeah, he's going to have scratches all over his face. He ran that way. When you find him, bring him back. I got some more for him. Victim B. I just let it happen to me. I don't care anymore. I don't even want to be here. I wish he killed me. Two types. Which one has that winning mindset, right? The winning mindset is how we overcome all of our obstacles, all of our trials. When you go to work to win. You go to work to be a benefit to your agency, to your organization. Here on campus, when I ask students the same question, do you go to class? Do you study with the intention of failing? Absolutely not. You're trying to get the A. And so that needs to be our approach to life. And the same thing applies when we are in a situation of active threat. In that moment, your one goal is to come home. Too often we find, especially in law enforcement as society these days, we're seeing that people are willing to put other people's feelings above their own personal safety. Please don't do that, because when you do that, you are clearly on track to get hurt. Time and time again, we make excuses for all these different individuals in our lives that we shouldn't be making excuses for. These are grown men, these are grown women. They can speak for themselves, but you have people going, "Oh, that's just Laura. She's loud like that. She's disrespectful. It's fine. I'm sure she'll apologize later. You know, John, he gets angry like that. He threw everything on the floor. He'll come to." No, it's all unacceptable behavior, especially when it comes to the office. We're adults. We know how we're supposed to act. Sometimes people will become childish. They'll become belligerent. That is, once again, you have your own operating procedures for how employees should act, for how people should behave. And we need to really act on that. Just like how Ed was saying, this comes back to prevention. If you see a problem in your office, as leaders, we need to act on it. And once again, there are ways we go about doing that. But coming back to defense, you have to defend yourself. So in the event, take a breath and remain calm. Thank you so much for my presentation. You will be in a situation that you've never been in before, and you'll be highly stressed. And the last thing that you're going to be able to do is remain calm, but you're a leader. And the people in your office space are leaders too. We have to empower our employees to remember, in any event of active threat, no matter what the situation is, they have to breathe, they have to remain calm, and they have to go about the work, they have to go about the business, right? And so we have to force ourselves. We almost have to lie to our minds, because in the moment of stress, you're going to have other employees who may also be coming to you. Hey, what do I do? And you have to lie to yourself, and you're going to say, I know exactly what to do. Follow me. You have to remember to remain calm and just execute the plan. And we're going to get into protocol here in a moment, but we have to follow instructions given. In the moment of stress, when things are going wrong, that is not the time to challenge the boss. Yeah, hey, Jake, I don't think we should go that way. No. Is there a plan? follow the plan, right? Follow instructions given. We want to put items down in our hands. This is what we want to tell our employees after a potential threat. We want to make sure that everyone, as they're exiting the building, their hands are up, right? Because in law enforcement, hands are what harms us. And that's another thing to remember. If you're talking to somebody and they've come into your lobby, your place of employment, and for whatever reason, they don't want to show you their hands, or they keep putting their hands in their waistband, you may have a potential problem. It's something to consider. So remember, avoid quick movements, pointing, yelling, screaming in the moment. Everyone's going to exit as orderly as they can. Law enforcement typically is going to be going in to potentially end any threat or address a situation. Incredibly important we remain calm. And once again, in any situation, you want to focus on this information. Things to provide dispatch. Location of the attack, location, right? It is so important. Where are we sending help to? Where are we going? Very important you tell people, hey, we're in this building. And if you don't have a good description, if you don't know the address at the top of your head, that's completely fine. Describe where you are. What is the closest landmark? Where are we going, right? Number of suspects seen, a physical description. What is the color of their shirt? What kind of shoes? Was it white? Do they have a weapon in their hand? If is it a long rifle? Is it a pistol? Is it a knife? What do they have? What kind of weapon are they using to execute any kind of workplace violence that you may be witness to? And of course, number of victims. That is so important when it comes to life saving, because once again, studies have shown that in moments of active shooter, the initial shootings typically don't kill those victims. What happens is law enforcement has to come in and we have to make that entire crime scene a warm zone. The fire department's not coming into a hot zone. So while we are executing our search, trying to clear floors, trying to make sure that that scene is safe, typically people are bleeding out and things are happening and we're not getting them out fast enough. So number of victims, if they're victims in the office space, these are things that we want to make sure we're telling our dispatchers. And once again, dispatchers will be telling our leaders, hey, if they can walk, let's get them out, right? Apply pressure, things like that. So it's important we remember information to provide. And this doesn't also just go for any type of active shooter event. This goes for everything. You witness a carjacking or there's a traffic crash somewhere. You need to provide this type of information to dispatch as you're giving it. So we talked a little bit about active shooter. Let's get into some of the other threats that you may potentially see. Vehicle-borne attacks is something that's becoming very popular throughout the United States, where there'd be a parade or some type of celebration, and all of a sudden, here's this car revving its engine on the fringe of that crowd, and people see it, and it doesn't register, and all of a sudden, that vehicle's driving through. So it's incredibly important. Here's that see something, say something aspect again, where here you are with your family or you're out with friends and you see a vehicle somewhere where you go, hey, that looks odd. I'm not sure why that vehicle's there. We need to say something about it, okay? And once again, you might see bollards or some type of vehicle disabling devices around structures, around buildings. And it may look aesthetically pleasing, but understand what it's really there for. It's to stop a vehicle from basically encouraging into that building's front entrance. And that's important. Maybe your place of employment, your office, has some type of bollard system in front of it. That's what it's there for. So once again, the human element is very important in this. You need to look around, pay attention, right? Don't just get so wrapped involved in any type of celebration that you're not casually looking around, right? Maybe your office has some type of celebration, or your sponsor something where employees go to a parade or something somewhere. Pay attention, right? It comes back to being very aware of your surroundings. Let's talk about IEDs, improvised explosive devices. We know that these are devices that are typically used during that active threat, active shooter. Columbine's a great example, where those two suspects use pipe bombs all throughout that high school as they were effecting their threat. So that's something to be aware of. Sometimes you'll have employees who are spiraling, right? And they make things in their off time. They're downloading stuff off the internet. See something, say something comes into effect again. Because law enforcement, there's only so much we can do with the information we have. We have to be talking to each other, right? Because we put ourselves sometimes in silos. One person has a piece of the puzzle here. One person has a piece of the puzzle here. And it's not until a threat has occurred do we put the puzzle pieces together afterward and go, oh man, we had it the entire time, right? So IEDs, very important piece of that puzzle. You see vehicles parked in places that they don't belong, or someone runs up, puts a bag somewhere and runs off. That's suspicious. You should say something about that. And then we come to knife attacks. Knife attacks are incredibly common, folks. You can easily conceal a knife, whether it be inside of your pocket, in the waistband, back pocket, anywhere like that. And if someone, once again, they don't want to really show you their hands, they're being belligerent, they're getting angry and frustrated, and they're standing up, and then of course they're doing this, pay attention where people's hands are, right? Knife attacks are very concealable. Knives themselves are very concealable. You want to make sure, okay, where is that individual's hands, right? Things to think about. Now, we've talked about all these other type of threats. What should you and your office staff expect in the workplace? What's going to be incredibly common? Because yes, can an active shooter happen? Absolutely, right? And that's why each and every single one of you hear this on this webinar today, and I'm grateful for your presence. But what should you expect on a day-to-day basis? Well, you're looking at irate employees, right? People getting into arguments with each other, or a supervisor, we're talking straight down, where a supervisor has an issue with an employee, or vice versa. Stalkers, right? Everybody on this webinar has experienced to some degree or knows someone who has experienced stalking. And for whatever reason, we make excuses for why, this can't be what's happening. This person sends you 100 emails in a span of a half an hour. That's a problem. And you should say something about that, right? But, I know that person. He's just angry. It'll blow over. 80% of all attacks in the United States are known. They're known, you know the suspect who's doing it, right? Only 20% approximately are stranger danger. So we know what's going on in these spaces. We have to see something and say something. And then, of course, you have your offsite individuals with grievances who enter our businesses, and they have nothing to do with your business, but now them being there, now it's a problem, right? So these are the things that we need to typically be on the lookout for, right? How should we address it? Well, let's talk about threat mitigation, right? I'm going to give you two parts very quickly. We're going to talk about neutralization, and then we're going to get into self-defense. In the moment, what should you do? What do you want to be able to do to defend yourself from a potential threat, active or not? We'll talk about it. So, mindset. Folks, once again, mindset is so important. I'm going to ask a couple questions in these two parts here, and I want you to seriously consider them. How are you waking up in the morning? How? Is it positive when you wake up? I feel rejuvenated. I'm going to go to work today. I'm going to have a great day. Or is it negative? Man, I hate going to work. I hate my job. What are we doing? What are we telling ourselves when we go to work, right? When we walk out that door, what's your mindset like? Folks, I promise you, the way the universe works, not once has the universe woken me up at midnight and go, hey, Matt, tomorrow someone's going to punch you in the face at 10 o'clock. They're going to punch you in the face. Be ready for it. And then they shuffle off, right? It's never happened to me before. I'm pretty sure it's never happened to anyone here either. So when the bad thing does happen, in that moment, you have to be ready to overcome that obstacle, to basically just challenge, right? Whatever's happening and overcome it. You're there to win, because remember, your one job at the end of the day is to go home, So we need to encourage our coworkers, right? Folks, this is something that is so easy to do, and yet we miss it. We're so caught up with doing the business, right? Getting things done, that we sometimes forget to be human. That one time that you see that employee walk in and clearly it looks like they're having a bad day. What are we saying? Hey, you look very nice today. Hey, you know what? Your team won last night. Hey, good job on that, right? What are we saying to make that one person? Because sometimes all it takes is one nice thing, and you'll never know what you did for that employee. And then they'll come back 6 months later and go, you know what, Tom, that a couple months ago, you told me, hey, man, really good job on that project. And man, it just made my day. We'll never know that one thing that you say to somebody, right, will just make the big difference. So it really comes back to mindset. What is the culture in your workspace? When you see that female employee that comes in and maybe she has a little bit more mascara on one side of the face than she should, are we saying something? Hey, Laura, let's go for coffee, right? How are we handling those situations? How are we making people feel loved? Are we truly a family when we work with our coworkers? That needs to be something that we're thinking about, because once again, when it comes to workplace violence, hey, you know what? This employee, female employee or male employee, they're having marital issues. That's their business until that partner comes to your place of business and makes it everybody's business, right? That's why we really need to be, once again, seeing something, saying something. It's incredibly important that we make our workspaces comfortable for people to be able to say, hey, leadership, this is what's going on. Hey, leadership, this is what I overheard. Hey, leadership, this is a joke that I heard someone told in the break room, and I didn't think it was funny, and I don't have a good feeling about it, right? We need to once again be empowering our employees to say something about what's going on in our offices, because I can tell you time and time again, we didn't know, it wasn't on our radar. Those excuses as leadership over our businesses, it's getting pretty tired. See something, say something. Once again, I will say this until the cows come home. It is one of the most important aspects of neutralization of threat. Your people have to report what's going on in your offices. If it's disturbing, if it's something that makes them uncomfortable, they have to say something, whether it be somebody's actions, whether it be something somebody said. Even, you know what, once again, don't put somebody's feelings above your own personal safety. We can always apologize later, especially if it was benign. Hey man, it really was a joke. I really didn't mean anything by it. That's fine. Understand you can't make jokes like that, right? We have to be able to have our employees feel comfortable in our workspaces to come forward and say, I saw something, I didn't feel comfortable with it. Boss, what do you think, right? Make sure that you have these spaces that are comfortable for that, right? It's so important that we do that. And also, we need to get back to trusting our gut, right? Too often we just go, nah, it's fine. Don't do that. Because sometimes you're going to be experiencing something, that inner voice is saying something's wrong. The hair in the back of your neck is rising. And as I'm saying this right now, somebody's going through something at your place of business and you're going, oh, he's right, right? Don't ignore those gut feelings. Say something to somebody, whether it just be a fellow employee or a boss, a manager, someone in leadership. Hey, I've been experiencing something. Somebody's been sending emails. This person that's been coming to our lobby, they have nothing to do with our business. And they keep coming in here and I'm concerned. We need to be talking about those things because this is how we produce that threat mitigation, how we neutralize that threat on the horizon, right? Folks, even emails, because we tend to disregard this all the time. You get an email, it reads kind of wacky, and you're just like, you know what? I'm just going to ignore it. Don't ignore it. Do not ignore it. It's incredibly important that you don't do that because let's talk about the pathway to violence. Every single thing, how this entire process starts is with grievance, where you have an individual that will come to your place of business, or you have an employee who maybe got a bad review, who felt, you know what, no, I should have gotten better marks than that. I worked really hard last year. You shouldn't be saying these things in my review. Now there's a grievance that starts, right? All of a sudden, there's a problem. And now that problem is with the business or with somebody in that business. Or let's talk about offsite grievances, right? I have a problem with my wife. I know where she works. Now, all of a sudden, my problem with my wife turns into a problem for every employee in that business. Pathway to violence, it's an ascending scale. It goes grievance, right? There's an issue. And then that issue is unresolved. And because that issue is unresolved, man, no one's listening to me. And you know what? Maybe you'll listen to me if I bring a gun, if I bring a taser, if I bring a knife, if I bring some type of weapon, or if I walk into your place of business and I act crazy. Yep, that's the next step, some type of violent ideation. And then I start researching and planning. I start looking online. How many other examples of what I'm thinking of doing are online? And folks, I promise you, radicalization happens all the time. As a threat management detective, I can tell you, I've seen it in my work. It's something that you will see. People spiral. They start circling the drain. The work product starts to suffer. People start slipping, right? We have a phenomena called leakage, where somebody, their brain, they know what they're thinking. They know what they want to do, but they're trying to hold it in. They physically can't, right? It comes out in some way, whether it's comments online or jokes that are inappropriate or behavior or the product of their work suffers. This was an A+ employee, right? They were doing everything great. And all of a sudden they start suffering. Something is going on. We need to recognize it and we need to solve it as best as possible at grievance. We get to probing and breaching, right? I want to do a violent act. How do I do it? What kind of firearms do I purchase? What kind of potential? How do I build a pipe bomb? All those things people get from online, and then they start going to these businesses, right? You start seeing people hanging around in places they shouldn't be. What is that person doing there? Why are they taking pictures of my business? Things like that. And then we get to implementation. Implementation, folks, that attack portion of this scale, you don't want to be anywhere near it. Chief talked about our individual a couple of years ago in 2018, who basically was right at implementation. He had all the firearms and everything on his bed, the long rifle, the bolt action 308, sniper's rifle that he called it. All the ammunition was on his bed. How close did we come to disaster? right? Never, never, you never want to be there. As best as you can, you want to solve everything at grievance. And we're going to talk about that. So this is basically the second portion of how we neutralize that active threat in our workspace. Self-defense. What do you do in the moment? We talked about avoidance. We talked about, denying access to us. And then we talked about, what? Those two other options didn't work. Now the threat is here. What do I do? How do I defend myself in the office space? Let's talk about it. So you have a very wonderful tool in pepper spray. We advocate all of our students, all of our staff, everyone on campus here at the University of Central Florida to carry pepper spray. It's so important. Now, for your employees in your businesses, maybe you have your own rule and regulations about what they can and cannot have in your places of business, right? But think about it. If you have pepper spray, fantastic. Do you know it expires? A lot of people don't. So look at your pepper spray. And if you're thinking about buying pepper spray, and I want everybody to get pepper spray, no matter who you are, carry it with you because it's incredibly important. If you're looking to potentially de-aggress somebody's aggression against you, right? How do you do that? Well, yes, you can have technique. You may learn boxing. You may have some type of martial art technique. That's fantastic. But the goal is to create distance. You want to keep somebody away from you, especially in the type of office spaces that we're working in, right? They're very small. Sometimes they're cubicles. You may have a threat in your office who may be that employee that you're firing, right? And they stand up and they want to try and throw hands at you. How do you defend yourself in that moment? Well, pepper spray is a great consideration. So really quickly, have you tested your pepper spray before if you have some, right? Very important you test your pepper spray because the time to figure out how your pepper spray works isn't during the emergency, right? I had a young lady when I asked her this question, a student here, and I said, have you tested your pepper spray before? And she's like, Sergeant Scott, you're right. I have tested it before. I was sitting in my car with the windows up and I sprayed it in my hand. Don't do that. Okay, don't do that. That's not smart. And test your pepper spray if you have one in your backyard against vegetation, right? It's not going to hurt the plants or anything like that. You get to see how that chemical is being deployed from that canister. Is it a gel? Is it a mist? Is it a spray? Is it a stream? I would advocate for streams because once again, you're trying to take that chemical as far away from you as possible because distance is your friend, right? And that also is very, very important when we're talking about our office spaces. We want to keep that threat for as far away from us as possible instead of coming into that workspace. It's coming against us. Now, the other things, the mists, the streams, the foams, it's important to remember that this chemical can also contaminate you. Both you and your attacker will be screaming in that office space, okay? So it's incredibly important you have something, a canister, that takes that chemical away from you. So pepper spray is one consideration. I love talking about it. Folks, number one, establish a protocol for your workspace. Establish a protocol. If you know you have a problem employee, if you know you have a problem client, if you know you have a problem visitor that's entering your lobby, that you're having staff deal with, that you're concerned about, please have some type of protocol in place. Are you contacting law enforcement? Do you know right now the non-emergency number for the law enforcement agency that serves your area? Is it Orange County Sheriff's Office? Is it a sheriff's office? Is it a police department? Do you have that non-emergency number? Because everyone can call 911, but not every time will you have an emergency. I fully advocate right now, you guys are gonna get some homework here. You should put in the non-emergency number for your local agency that serves you, right? Because should you ever need them for anything, especially if you're trying to prepare for a problem individual, they should be clued in. Right? The first time a law enforcement agency is hearing about a potential problem isn't when you're doing the firing. If you're actively scared of an individual or there's some type of fear in the office space regarding an employee, you should let your staff or management know, and there should be some type of protocol, some type of plan. How's your inter-office communication? How are you talking to other employees? Is there some type of thread? Is some type of cellular communication? Are we using Microsoft Teams or some type of other type of device as we're communicating with each other? Because 9 times out of 10, the first time that you're going to know there's a problem is typically whoever's at your front desk. They're the Paul Revere of that entire office space. Because once they say, hey, there's an issue here, or you hear the yelling, that's typically when you're going to know. Because trust me, I've seen a lot of these different offices. Your office is somewhere in the back. You're on the phone, you're doing your meetings, you're in your own world as far as your business is concerned. And 9 times out of 10, you're not going to know there's an issue going on at the front desk. What are we doing as employers to make sure that all of our staff is on the same page? If this happens, we all do this. We have to have plans, right? It's a plan. Comes back just like the fire alarm, pull that fire station. Everyone knows they have to get up and walk out. Everyone's on the same page with that. We have to be on the same page with this. Number two, de-escalation. Folks, remember when I talked about breathing? This is so important because once again, this is how you're going to get the oxygen to your brain, and it's going to lower your heart rate, because in any type of situation, emergency, stress, your body's trying to tell you to do two things. Remember, fight or flee. Fight or flee. And once again, typically we just freeze. But in that moment of fear, when we're dealing with that person who's in our face yelling because, you know, you didn't do this right, or whatever the case may be, we need to breathe. There's something called combat breathing that we use from the military and also in law enforcement. You breathe in through your nose, you hold it for 2 seconds, you breathe out through your mouth, hold it for 2 seconds, in through your nose, hold it for 2 seconds, out through your mouth, hold it for 2 seconds. By doing this, you're calming yourself down and you're getting that oxygen to your brain so you can think and then you can respond. Folks, here's what I want you to do. De-escalation has been a tactic that we utilize in law enforcement for many, many years. It works. It absolutely does. And what you want to tell people is, hi, my name is Matt. I'm sorry you're going through this situation. How can I help you? Nice, calm voice. You're in a gentle tone. You're not going to judge them for whatever grievance they have. You're going to listen to what they have to say, and you're going to try and help them as professionally as possible. As professionally as possible. We all know who our hotheads are in the office. Girl, I don't need this job. Yeah, you can get these hands. Time out. Calm down. Hold on. Professionally, right? Because the last thing I want anybody to do is make a promise you cannot keep. Because when you do that, now you become the grievance, right? I'm gonna come see you, Peggy, because you told me you could help me and you didn't. You failed me, and now I'm coming to see you, right? So we need to remember we're handling every situation, every problem that our company, our workspace comes across. We handle it in a professional manner and help people to the best of our ability. Now, all that didn't work, right? This person is basically coming across the table at our employees. What do we want you to do? Now we come to the defending aspect. I want you to give people clear commands. Tell them what you want them to do, right? Use your voice. Too many times when we're in that frozen state, we get real quiet and we're no. If you want to tell somebody to get back, tell them to get back. We're going to use our hands, right? Stretch their arm out. This is a psychological barrier between you and your potential aggressor. You want to make sure that they know you mean business. Take control of that situation. Don't let the situation control you. You're the leader, right? Because remember, your one job is to come home. You're telling that person, get back. Rob, you're being too loud. I need you to stop. Sit down, right? Clear, authoritative voice. Take control. And that way, other employees are hearing that and they're going, oh, there's a problem, something's wrong. And then our protocol comes into play, right? Do we contact law enforcement at this time? Okay, a number of employees go to that other employee to help, right? We address the situation as a whole, and that employee is not dealing with the situation by themselves, okay? Make sure in all of these scenarios, we're contacting the police. We're making sure the police are on the way, all right? So folks, remember I told you I was gonna give you some homework. I do work for a university, okay? Tonight, you're going to go to sleep. When you wake up tomorrow, what I want everybody that's on this call to do is to say, today's going to be a good day. Today's going to be a good day. Your mindset will play a huge part in everything you do, whether it be your job or that potential challenge, that potential threat you may face. You have to be in that right mindset to overcome any challenge you may see. Thank you for your attention today. I appreciate you. And I'll turn it back over to Jason.
Thank you so much, Sergeant Scott, for that presentation. That was very, very informative. Very good stuff. We do have a couple questions. Sergeant Scott, I'm going to start with you on one question here. Is do other universities follow the same model as far as University of Central Florida, providing the necessary trainings to their employees, to the staff, as well as to the students?
That's a great question. And yes, a lot of universities have a system or a means of being able to impart the run, hide, fight model, which of course now we're adopting to avoid, deny, defend. But they've put out videos. They have different modules that staff and also students have to basically sign off on. And we're trying to get that information out, right? And I'm sure everyone has seen videos that law enforcement kind of puts out there. They work with the FBI on you too can survive an active shooter. Some of it can be a little frightening in watching it, and we understand in law enforcement that how we give or impart this information is just as important as the information itself. The last thing I want anyone who is hearing our talk or watching any video that's produced from our agency is walking away with a mindset of fear. No, it needs to be about empowerment. And a lot of universities are really getting with that information. I think Chief Metzger has done a fantastic job over the years of really making sure how we deliver that information, once again, is just as important as the information itself. Empowerment. We want everyone to contact the university police. See something, say something, and we'll do something about it. It is one of the most major mantras we have on campus, and it's something that I think law enforcement really is starting to get back to, because too often people are too afraid to come forward because once again, whatever reason. Folks, remember, you are the protagonist of your story. When the end credit rolls, your name will be hopefully the first name in those credits. So why are we making side characters the main characters in our story? You are the one that finds you. And remember, just very quickly, as the universities, as all police departments are getting this information out, who's responsible for your self-defense? You are, right? You are responsible for your self-defense, which is why see something, say something is so important. Good question.
And one more question. Is there any other additional trainings that you would recommend as a law enforcement officer on top of active shooter when it comes to the psychology of how to act in these situations?
That's a great question. You know, there are a lot of different police departments that provide different webinars or different things online. There are a lot of colleges sometimes that will provide free classes to the community regarding active threat or anything like that. Sometimes there'll be police departments that have town halls. So as far as training is concerned, this is along the lines of exactly what you should be looking for, where you have a law enforcement representative telling you, hey, here are the steps that you need to do to keep yourself safe. Another thing, once again, that I would really recommend, really leadership. If you're a leader within your workspace, within your office, make contact with your local law enforcement. You have a liaison, establish contact. Too often, the only times we do that is when there's a threat that presents itself, and then we're only making contact after the fact. We should have a first name basis with supervisors within our law enforcement community, within our workspaces. So if you do have a problem, you can actually consult law enforcement and say, hey, John, you're a sergeant at XYZ Police Department. Thank you for what you do. I've got a person that keeps coming in at 2 o'clock and they keep ranting and raving in my lobby, and I'm concerned. What can we do, right? So those are the things, once again, as far as training, establishing relationships is just as important too.
Yep, absolutely. Another question that actually could be both answered by you as well as Ed is, should employers provide active shooter trainings to their employees?
Ed, I'll let you take that one.
All right. I think the answer, I think any training is good, and I would say yes, the answer is yes on that, pretty much definite. But you want to make sure that you have your employees, and part of this having inspected when you're doing the emergency action program. If you have an emergency action plan in place, that's going to be touch and base about how to deal with active shooters. So you are actually training those employees on that and what to be able to do.
And, you know, being that that leads to my next question, being that, you know, OSHA requires the emergency preparedness plan and, you know, evacuations and things of that nature. You mentioned earlier that where some states do not require to have a workplace violence policy. If an employer were to issue a policy, a written policy on that, how would they become liable if the state does not require it?
Well, I don't see how you could be, if you're providing protection, somehow providing training, whatever protection for your employees. They're not, that doesn't open you up to any type of liability because you're going above and beyond.
Yeah.
Like I say, OSHA doesn't require it. They don't have a policy requirement, but if the facts show up, right, then they may cite you for general duty clause violations. So I think if you're implementing those things, you're actually doing more, and so you're actually protecting yourself from a legal perspective.
Yeah. So it's actually recommended then for all employers to actually have a written, a written program on workplace violence.
Yeah, and actually even have an emergency action plan, just generally, just cover all the different potential issues. You know, here we're talking about active shooter or disgruntled employee or disgruntled customer, and also, you know, hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, all that stuff, how it fires. Here's what we do when you have that. So, and I think that's what Officer Scott was Sergeant Scott was actually talking about, those different things that make sure you have that in place.
Absolutely. Yes. All right, great. Yeah.
And
just
he's
for the-
also one of the best dressed guys I've ever met there.
yes, yeah, fantastic suit, Sergeant Scott. Absolutely. All right, good deal. Yeah, and just for all the folks that are listening, we at the Florida Chamber Safety Council, we also do offer active shooter training. So if you are interested in, in pursuing that or getting more information, please do not hesitate to give me a shout at any time. So, gentlemen, Chief Metzger, Ed Foulke, and Sergeant Scott, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time today and leading this webinar. I know that every single participant will leave here today having a lot more better knowledge and better tools to establish a safer workplace and a safer community on top of that. So just can't thank you guys enough for all the insight that you've shared, and thank you all for participating here in the webinar. So I just want to say thank you all. God bless you and be safe.
Thank you.